It's 5.
Harry Wilson, absolute blinder.
Calvert-Lewin may well have won it for Fulham. It's a wonderful strike from Willian.
Come on, Fulham! Come on!
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back with our first preview of the season. Man United this Friday night, here to discuss everything with me for the first time this season. We have Sam. How are we going, Sammy?
I'm going very good. I feel very wholesome right now. It's the first time it's just been my family. We've had new people in the fold, but I feel very warm inside. I feel very excited. Dad was doing some weird before we started, and that's got me in a good buzz for this. I'm excited to get into it all. It's like we've come full circle now. It's great, and we're back into the season.
I knew throwing to you first would be the right idea. Dad, how are we going tonight?
I'm very well, thanks. I'll keep my intimate noises to myself, but I'm very happy to be here, and thanks everyone for listening in, and I cannot wait for Friday night.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, and it feels like this preseason has maybe dragged a little with the fact that transfers have come fairly late in the window, to be honest, as always, as expected. Losing players like Palhinha early in the window, it does feel like this has been a weird preseason, and then the results have actually been pretty positive so far. But look, before we crack on and get into it, let's just make another mention of the Discord, which has been firing lately. It's been great to be involved with that, and do check our profile out on Twitter. You'll find the Discord link there. You can join in. There's a transfer chat where we get all the news firsthand. We're very fortunate as well to have people like Cottage Tactico, Fulham Fan News in and amongst the Discord users, giving us a lot of extra insight that you won't see on Twitter. So do join up. Also to mention cravenpod.com, where you can check out all our articles, links to everything. That's So Craven. So it's a good place to start. Make sure you check those two out. And guys, let's crack into it. First game of the season. I guess we've talked a little bit about how we're feeling, but Man United first up. Let's be honest, if you wanted a first game, Sammy, is this the game that you'd be looking for, Man United?
It's pretty tasty. I mean, so you've just thrown to me in a very journalistic way. Sam, what do you think? It's as far as like top 6 teams that we can play against, Man United are the ones that I feel the most confident playing against, just because I've never really been that much of a fan of Ten Hag. I think he's really on the ropes. I know they just won an FA Cup, but for me, that's just almost a bit of a flash in the pan kind of situation. We were just basically saying offline, their defense is cooked. Adama Traore is firing. Smith Rowe is firing. We beat them last season with a lesser squad to what I actually think we have now. I mean, dare I say optimistic? I'm not sure. But if nothing else, this could be probably one of our best starts that we've had in a very, very long time. I'm a bit. I've actually, now that I've said it, I'm almost uncomfortable with how comfortable I am with this.
I was going to say that's very confident. So we got Man U up first. It's going to be our best start for this season in years and years. Dad, I'll throw to you for a more realistic view. How are we feeling with Man United first up?
Well, I love the way that we absolutely are convinced we're in for points here, and we're building ourselves to a point where we're going to be deeply disappointed if we come away with nothing. And I kind of love that about it. It just feels like things have changed in the last couple of years with Man United. I think maybe that Mitro day was a turning point where we somewhat embarrassed ourselves at Old Trafford. We should have done so much better, and it feels like we left a little bit out there. And every time we go back, feels like we need to make amends for that and do the business and bring the points home.
It's interesting. Only twice in Fulham's history have we beaten Man United back to back. We've never actually done it twice away from home in a row either. So it is a big ask. Old Trafford is obviously a tough place to go. I think a Friday night to start the season as well probably makes it a little tougher. So as much as I'm confident after a good preseason, some good signings, and as we'll talk about, some injury issues for Man United, I have to be slightly realistic here. And I think really we could do well to take a point here, but it does offer up a good opportunity for us to take advantage of a team who maybe haven't got off to the best start in preseason so far. Let's jump in and have a look at recent form just to sort of give us an overview. Let's look at Fulham so far as well, our preseason. I mean, it's a pretty good-looking preseason stat sheet, really. Dad wins behind closed doors against QPR and Watford, and then the Portugal tour, a win against Benfica. We played effectively a second 11 against Sevilla, and then a win with a pretty strong side against Hoffenheim, a 2-0 victory. I mean, this is probably one of our better pre-seasons in the last few years. Do you think there's a lot of confidence that comes with that going into the new season?
I think there are two different perspectives here, if not multiple. But I think fans look at every time their team goes out and plays and are looking for wins and kind of consider it to be a little mini season, if you like, and are always looking for wins, always buoyed by wins, and always a little bit beaten up and depressed if we don't do that well. I think you have to keep an eye on the fact that these are coaching and trialing opportunities and chances for the team managers to actually nut things out, try things out. Obviously, results are important, and clean sheets from a defensive point of view, hugely important. You don't want to lose, by 5 goals, no matter who you're playing, because it's just crap to kind of experience that in the dressing room. But I actually think it's been very, very effective. I think what you're looking for are decent quality opposition, ideally Premier League teams, but that's unlikely to happen unless you go out to Australia or America and have a bit of a carnival tour. But even then, you're not playing first team versus first team, so you can't draw too many conclusions. I just think it's preparation. It's the next level beyond the training ground. It's getting some miles into the legs, some match fitness, and those are the objectives, I think. And I actually feel we're in pretty good shape. Obviously, I'd love to have had a couple more key signings, but for the guys who are going to provide, the squad that turn up on Friday, I think we're looking pretty good.
I'm almost glad as well that Palhinha hasn't been in preseason at all. So at least we've actually had a good amount of time to readjust. And Smith Rowe has had I know he's realistically he's only played a game and a half, but that's still better than absolutely nothing. He can just kind of go into the Premier League now, actually kind of established in the squad, or at least enough to maybe start first game. And yeah, from everything I've seen, that's kind of what I want.
Yeah, it's always tough with preseason to know how seriously to take results. And I think managers will often say it post-game. You never really know what a manager really means when they say it post-game, but it's often not about the result itself. It's more about the sort of signs that you see on the pitch, that players are starting to understand the system. New players are starting to integrate well with their new teammates. And I think you're right, looking at someone like Smith Rowe, even if we didn't get the results that we did actually get, you'd still say that across those handful of games that he actually played, he's had a really good opportunity to get used to his teammates. He's managed to find the score sheet a couple of times as well. So that's the kind of positive signs I think you're looking for. Similarly with someone like with Cuenca, for example, he's not going to be thrown into the deep end right from the start, but to see him put into the team and to see him make an impact straight away, it is good signs more than anything. Let's have a quick look at Man United's recent form. Obviously, quite a different type of opponent that they've played. They've played Rangers, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, and Real Betis in pre-season. couple of wins with wins against Rangers and Real Betis, but losses to Arsenal, Liverpool, and then loss on penalties to Man City in the Community Shield. Sam, I'll throw to you on this one. How much should we be looking into the results here for Man United?
It's always going to be hard, isn't it? Because Man United, they always play a bit of a mixed team in their preseason. Like I always remember Pereira being referred to as the preseason Pirlo because he always used to do really good preseason, and they just never used to play him. So I can't really take too much away from this. Real Betis, though, I feel like they should have played much better against them. Like to concede 2 goals against a squad that realistically they should be putting that away pretty comfortably. That I'm not really sure what that says. But again, I mean, it's hard because I don't think they're ever gonna fully commit their full first 11 because they're really just testing the waters and they're going through their youth as well just to actually see who's even there, like who's potentially going to feature. So it's difficult. I've heard from my Man United fan friends that they're completely done with Scott McTominay after this season. So they basically said they can just give him to us. But I just don't fully know. And I'll be perfectly honest, I haven't really been watching them, so I can't really gauge who's performing well. I've heard Rashford's had a pretty good preseason, but again, that can just be Man United bias and bollocks. It's really difficult with those top teams in the preseason.
One thing to maybe look at and analyze here is in Man U's last 4 games, they've conceded 8 goals, which is quite a lot. And one thing I do want to bring up as well is the fact that Man United have a bit of an injury problem at the moment. If we look at their injury list going into the first game of the season, Lenny Yoro, Taro Masia, Luke Shaw, Victor Lindelof, Harry Maguire, that's 5 defenders out. And, you know, the majority of those, admittedly, Yoro hasn't made his competitive debut for the club yet, but you'd expect Shaw, Maguire and Lindelof at least to probably start those games. They're also missing Rasmus Højlund as well up front, who, came good towards the end of last season and actually started looking pretty good in preseason before he got injured too. Dad, how much of an effect do you think that's going to have, losing, a lot of players? We talk about it when we make new signings that you can't just throw them in the deep end. Man, you are probably going to be put in a position where they have to play players out of position, maybe play youngsters in those defensive positions. How do you think they're going to struggle with that?
Well, it's got to be an issue. Those are big names. And I think it's there's got to be some linkage in those numbers and the leakage that you mentioned from their preseason results. That is a lot of goals. I didn't pick that up, but really a lot of goals that they've leaked. I think we need all the help we can get, to be honest, away at Old Trafford. So, yeah, not a lot of sympathy, and I hope they're a rabble.
Well, fingers crossed. Guys, it would be good to get an idea, because obviously there's been a few incoming, outgoing, on the way you'd like to see Fulham line up for this game. I think we're all pretty comfortable with Bernd Leno in goal. Across the back line, there's probably a few more questions. I assume everyone's pretty comfortable with Anthony Robinson definitely being our left back rather than Ryan Sessegnon. Nothing against Sessegnon, but Robinson is in great form at the moment and looked really sharp in pre-season too. Across the 2 centre-backs, we've got Bassi. We obviously, with Tim Ream leaving, we got Cuenca as a backup for Bassi on the left side. We got Diop on the right side without any real cover behind him at this stage, at least. There's links to Diego Carlos and Joachim Anderson, which we'll talk about a bit later. But how would you like to see us line up with those back 2 in the middle there? Do you want to see Bassi and Diop start, as they seem to have done for most of pre-season? Or do you think it's worth a risk with Cuenca, who showed he's very good with the ball at his feet and might help us be a bit more progressive?
I can't see there be any chance that Bassi does not start. That's a double negative. I do apologise for that. But Bassi's going to start. And I think Diop's going to be on the right. I don't think there's I don't want that to be true. I want that to change really soon, but that's down to the window. And I can't see it being anything else but that.
Yeah, I understand the logic of wanting a right-footed center back and your right, you know what I mean, and having Bassi just occupy that left position. And I understand why Diop is currently favored at the moment. But really, I think from everything I've seen from Cuenca, I want to see if he can actually embrace that partnership and actually be on the right side. Because if he's good enough, I think I actually would prefer that. I'm not too bothered with him being a left footer. And to be honest, like I think if you are playing Premier League level, you have to be able to do both. And I think he can actually offer us more than Diop can. God bless Diop. I don't know. Maybe it's a bit of the grass is greener on the other side, and I think we're just getting excited about the fact that we still don't fully know this guy and what he's capable of. But the little chaos angel in me just wants to roll the dice and actually see if that can work. Because if that can work, I'd rather get the ball rolling on that sooner rather than later.
To be honest, I haven't seen Cuenca play yet. I missed the his entrance in Portugal. So I don't know whether he is like every other left footer and extremely left sided. And you know, if he's 2-footed but happens to be, you know, predominantly left foot, great. But I would almost say that it can be so awkward having a player at centre back play on their wrong side. You know, this is the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we saw it last season with Bassi trying to play on the right when Ream, when he had to partner Ream, and Ream obviously didn't move off the left. And compare Bassi on the right to Bassi on the left, and they're completely different players. And that's always the worry. I don't know how well Cuenca would be able to play slightly out of position on that right-hand side. I think risking it against Man United maybe isn't the best idea.
Yeah,
definitely not.
So I'd say we probably do stick with Diop, but yeah, go ahead.
The other problem is that teams do their homework, and the problem is they are so good at actually forcing players onto their weaker sides, and actually forcing a problem that shouldn't probably be there, but they'll create a problem. And actually, the moment he's given the ball to play out, he'll be absolutely pressed so hard in a way that forces him onto his right foot, and it'll start to unravel from there. It happens all the time. So I'm not. Maybe Ipswich, give them a go if you're desperate, but no, not Man United away.
It's hard, isn't it? Because like centre backs as well, a lot of it has to do with their preempting play and their positioning. Because I do feel that you can kind of get away with. Because I remember when Tim Ream played, and obviously this is a bit of a slippery slope example because Tim Ream is excellent. But I remember when he played on the right a little bit later on into the season, and Bassi played on the left. Literally just in inverse of what happened earlier in the season. And I actually thought he played really, really well on the right. So it kind of goes to show it can work if you kind of have that innate understanding of what to do. But I just don't know enough about Cuenca to actually determine whether he's that sort of player or not.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We haven't seen enough of him yet. I would like to see him try it at some point, but maybe that's for a game against, an Ipswich or a Leicester at some point in the season where we feel like we can probably get away with not being quite as sharp. It's something to consider, at least. I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think you're probably right that we do stick with Diop. It does sort of make sense. And we all know Marco likes sense.
Or we could just try to throw as much money at Joachim Andersen within the next 48 hours and just see what happens.
But Marco as well, he would never start a player who's just signed.
That's true. That's true.
But,
Well, you know,
but
Marco's,
I agree. That's a
Marco's
conversation
boss.
for a bit later anyway.
Yeah, okay, I'll save it. I was going to say, Marco's boss is even less likely to behave in that way.
Yeah, that too. Let's talk about right back. Kenny Tete versus Timmy Chestnuts. What do we think? Dad, I'll throw you first.
Well, we did talk about this the last time we chatted. Kenny Tete is looking really good. He's looking great in the Hoffenheim game. I thought he looked terrific. Haven't seen Castagna at all personally. I'm sure there's been no drop of at all. I think Kenny's just had a good summer. He's obviously tidied up his injuries and he's looking sharp. And I'm not sure if it represents a change in the way Silva wants to play at right back. I think it's more a case of Kenny's got Marco's blessing at the moment.
Sammy?
It's really hard for me actually because I really like Castagna. I'm a big fan of Kenny. I'm a big fan of Kenny Tete, but Castagna really won me over last season, and they're just so different. It's really hard to compare them because they just do such different things. Like I think of Kenny Tete. Kenny Tete. Yeah, Kenny Testes. I think of Kenny Testes as a really strong defensive right back who can potentially break lines if he needs to and just really hold shit down. But I really like Castagna's ball control. I just feel so confident when he's there. There's something about him that just really puts me at ease. And I by no means do I want to get rid of. It's really hard for me to choose one over the other, because I do think, as much as I really like Kenny, I do think he does have a mistake in him. And when he's great, it's awesome and I love it. But I don't think I always have the consistency with him that I get with Castagna. I think I might actually be leaning more towards Castagna, and that's just my personal bias. I can get hate for that. I don't care. But I think for a game like Man United, where I want the best, if it doesn't work with Castagna, just sub him off.
I'm torn on this one. I think Castagna is the more solid right back option. But Kenny Tete on his day is able to shut down players in a way that no one else seems to be able to do. When you got players like Garnacho maybe running at him, Anthony, and you want someone who's incredibly good one-on-one, Kenny Tete is your man for that. And so I feel like Silva will probably go with Kenny, knowing that he is so good at those one-on-one defensive situations. And it makes total sense. He doesn't offer quite as much going forward, but obviously that's not the avenue we sort of try and go down most of the time. We do attack more down the left than down the right. So I fully expect us to go with Kenny purely for that reason. I just think one-on-one, he's very hard to beat. And he's looked really good in pre-season one-on-one a few times as well. So it makes sense to me that despite Castagna having a pretty good Euros and a very good season last season, it just feels like this is going to be a game for Kenny. Dad, I don't know if you agree with that or not.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. I think he is that sort of big match one-on-one guy, and I think Silva does believe in him. I don't agree with you, Sam, that he's got a mistake in him. I think the issue is more about the quality going forward, where, frankly, in the very, very final third, neither of them are really, really, really top level. But if they were, they'd be £40 million players.
Yeah,
I do trust. I trust the Castagna cross a bit more than I trust the Kenny Tete cross.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Moving further up the field, the central two sitting deep, obviously without Palhinha, it throws everything open, and there's a few players who could slip into those positions. We've seen Lukic alongside Pereira. We've seen Lukic and Kearney. It's a possibility of old school Reed and Kearney, Reed and Pereira. I'll throw across to you first, Sammy. Who would you like to see sitting deep, and who would you like to see sitting slightly further forward? So I guess the 6 and the 8, if you will.
Yeah, it's a real choose your own adventure at the moment. I mean, it's good problems to have. I actually think I might want Lukic and Pereira. Lukic sitting deep and then Pereira sitting a bit more forward. I think that's what I want. I could be completely wrong because I mean, the best option might even be Lukic and Reed, because I think that's probably the most battle seasoned. But I want Pereira to play because I think he's too much of a loss when he's not there. I know that that opinion potentially upsets some people, but yeah, I still think he has a tremendous amount of value, and I want to put Smith Rowe in the best possible position. So that requires starting the best players. So I think I want Lukic and Pereira.
Yeah, I'll throw to you, Dad. But before I do, it's Sam sort of brings up an interesting point there. And what we've seen so far through most of preseason is that front three, as in the wingers and the attacking midfielder in the 10, of Iwobi on the left, Adama on the right, and Smith Rowe centrally. That sort of puts Andreas Pereira out of position. Not out of position, but it kicks him out of the squad, and therefore you're looking for a place to play Pereira. Do you think that probably gives him an edge over someone like a Kearney or a Reed? Because he is one of our better players, let's be honest. And I feel like you're not really... It's not like he's being made to play defensive midfield, for example. He is still playing in a position that he can be useful at and actually influence the game. Do you think we're likely to see Pereira sit there, or do you think there's a possibility of him pushing forward and maybe Smith Rowe starts on the bench or starts out wide?
Well, what I was going to say before Sam kind of said pretty much what I was going to say is that I don't think I can confine this conversation to the the defensive and central midfield.
Too.
I think my thoughts begin with the fact that Smith Rowe plays and he starts every single game because he's that good, and we paid £27 million for him. So he's starting every game. I think there was a lot of conjecture about where he may play. And I fully believe that as the season unfolds, we may well see him from time to time on the left and in various positions. And I think there's going to be a lot of moving musical chairs going on. But I actually think for what I've seen at Hoffenheim, I'm certain Smith Rowe will be in the number 10. And I think we want both Smith Rowe and Pereira on the field. They're two really, really good players. And yeah, like you say, I don't think we're asking Pereira to be to perform an entirely defensive role. And I think he's really good there. It's a matter of I'm sort of wondering whether he wants to and likes playing that role, because I think he's going to have to get used to it if he wants to play a big part of this team's future. I think it's that hard. The problem I have is who you then partner with Pereira. It's problematic for me. I think, of course, Lukic can do a job, but it feels like a bit of a placehold, and it just doesn't feel like a perfect midfield to me. But I don't really know who else could come in and do the job that has to happen at the base of midfield.
It's actually a really good point you raised there. But I did just want to quickly say as well, I think Andreas can actually do the same role from centre mid that he has been doing in the 10, because Smith Rowe really plays like an attacking poacher. Like he's good at literally just finding quick opportunities and just being incredibly fluid. So he wouldn't necessarily get in Pereira's way. And like But you raised such a good point in I don't know who Andreas pairs well with. Possibly a new Brazilian signing. That might make sense. But until that happens, I mean, it could almost be somebody like Harrison Reed might partner the best with him. We just don't know because he just hasn't played there that often.
Well,
But
the problem with that, Sam, is that we've just got such a height disadvantage and a bulk disadvantage in defensive midfield.
yeah,
Harrison Reed, we love him. We know exactly what he does. He's tenacious, very hardworking, but he simply isn't going to be able to compete in the aerial deals in midfield and kind of do the. Well, he's certainly good at break-up play, but he's not going to play that really effective muscle role.
yeah. I'm
that
not
we
backing him
need.
against Haaland, you know.
Well, no, absolutely not.
Mm. So when we talk about, I don't know the answer to those midfield two. I think personally,
Well, I think you do. It's called the transfer window.
well, yeah, I agree. There's probably two players still to come in that we're looking at in those positions. I mean, obviously McTominay, Andre, and Calvin Phillips are three names linked that all fit into the mold of what we're looking for. McTominay with a bit more height, sort of crashing into the box a little bit more often, going forward as well. And Andre, someone who can sit deep and control the game. So it would make sense for those two to come in. But at the moment, we obviously don't have those players. And it kind of makes sense that you pick the best players for that you have at the time. And for me, at the moment, that probably looks like Lukic and Pereira. I think Lukic and Kearney probably work a little better together. But I reckon we're likely to see Pereira sit deep. And look, I liked what I saw from Pereira sitting deep. He played a couple of really good through balls in the last game. And I always enjoy seeing him sort of do a Tom Kearney, basically, and pick up the ball between the two centre-backs almost and be able to dictate play, because he is very good at passing the ball and progressing the ball. So maybe it's a position we'll see him grow into a little more this season, because he was never really a goal-scoring 10, which I think Smith Rowe will be for us. And so maybe repositioning himself into that deeper role will work better for him going forward. And you know, he's found himself in the Brazil squad recently. Maybe reinventing himself a little bit as someone who can play for an even longer extended period in the Brazil team would actually be beneficial for him in the long run.
Here's a question, though.
Yeah.
Here's a question. You know, let's say Smith Rowe turns out to be everything that we think he's going to be, and I'm sure he will be, and we sign an Andre. So you're short of that big physical midfielder or defensive midfielder. What role for Pereira at that point?
Well, there's the possibility, I guess, of a bit of rotation. Smith Rowe, we know, could be on the bench, starts Smith Rowe out wide. Like, you know, depending on the game that you're playing, you might not need McTominay, and he's a good player to come off the bench late in a game. Or there's the possibility for some proper squad rotation that you see the big six teams do fairly regularly when you've got a slightly better, deeper squad.
But it's not so much rotation. It's more about tactically setting up in very different ways for different opposition, right? As opposed to having two Pereira-like players and two Andre-like players and two McTominay-type players who simply cover themselves because they can't play every match. But I think it leaves us with some pretty interesting questions, which we're not there yet because we can't quite sign Andre. So let's not bother about that till we do. But I just think it's it could make for some very interesting match planning.
It's funny as well because like all of our options, they aren't necessarily bad options. Like I don't necessarily feel bad if Kearney steps in or Reed steps in. Like it's not like the idea of like Rodak going in goal that like fills me with agonizing stress. Like we actually have a decent amount of stuff to play here. If anything, the only thing that we're in the dark about is what actually fits best, which is a good position to be in.
But I think, when you're swapping a 5'10" player in Reed for a 6'3" defensive midfielder, that's a big difference.
Yeah, totally. But it's also not. It's hard as well because sometimes those smaller players can actually do a little bit more damage than those huge clunky bricks because Harrison Reed has the potential to actually disrupt people way more so than just a huge figure in the middle of the park. But it's really hard. It's just something that we can only really speculate from now because we just don't really know what's going to happen. And again, the transfer window as well clouds judgment even further.
I guess last thing to talk about when we talk about the lineup, striker Rodrigo Muniz is obviously our first choice striker, but hasn't had the best preseason. Hasn't scored a huge number of goals. I think he put a couple away in the behind closed doors games, but against bigger opponents, he kind of struggled a little bit. Do we feel like he is still going to be our first choice going forward this season? And I guess how long do you give him if he goes on a bit of a dry spell?
Well, he allegedly scored goals behind closed doors. Did he? Is that fake news?
He did. No, he definitely did.
I'm only kidding. I think as purple as his patch was and as short as it was pretty scintillating, right? And I think if he'd scored, I don't know, 3 or 4 goals in a month, that would be a very different thing in my mind to what he actually did. I think in a pretty short period of time, he actually proved himself as a Premier League striker. So I'm not bothered that he can do it, and I think Marco will keep backing him. And even if he's having a kind of rubbish 60 minutes, and we bring on Raul for the remainder of the game, that's okay. It's try something different. Although I've never really thought Raul was that good off the bench, to be honest. I think. I think he's proven himself as our number 9. I'd love us to sign someone else, but God knows we're having enough trouble signing players in really key positions that we're missing. It doesn't seem likely that we're going to get another striker this window. Could be wrong because we all think we know what's actually cooking and what's going on, but clearly we don't. I'm okay. I think Muniz will. On the break, I think he will do that Premier League thing in kind of holding up and muscling it with big defenders. I think he's going to be fine. I really hope he gets a goal very early in the campaign so he doesn't get the twisties.
Yeah, the psychology of strikers in particular, I find really, really interesting because he needs. Wonderful. I applaud you. Really, he just needs to get a goal. He needs to get a goal or potentially even an assist. If he got an assist, I'd actually be perfectly happy with that. As long as he just really needs to stay within the game. I think Jimenez. I think Jimenez could potentially score earlier than Muniz if, say, for example, you gave them both the same opportunity. But I feel like it's more important for Muniz to actually get the opportunities because when he is confident, he's a better player than a confident Jimenez, at least from what we've seen. I mean, he's shown us that he can do it, and he's creative and he's strong and he's young. And it just makes sense to just back him. So, as I said in the previous pod, it's going to be an adjustment period for him with Smith Rowe there. But I think that should iron out over time. And once he kind of climatizes to that and just basically climatizes to Smith Rowe taking his opportunities, I think that could manifest as something really, really awesome, but it might have to give it a minute.
Yeah, fair enough. Guys, something I want to return to that we haven't done for a little while, seeing as it's a new season, it's the return of Jack's top tip.
Please
gamble Now-
responsibly.
I might try and keep a tally this season to see if I actually win at all. I don't think I think we got a couple half decent tips last year, but here's one for the Man United game. Adama Traore, anytime goal scorer. We saw how dangerous he was against Man United last time, just coming off the bench. He set up Iwobi for the goal. With Luke Shaw out injured and a few other issues in defence, and early season when a lot of players are still trying to, get to peak physical fitness, maybe there's an opportunity for Adama to get in behind a little more often and cause some issues. We saw the goal against Hoffenheim where he was just far too fast for the defenders. And his finishing seems to have improved a little bit as well, which is always good to see. So Adama Traore is an anytime goal scorer. Fulham or draw is a double chance here. So that covers Fulham and the draw. That's $2.40. So a two-leg multi with those two give you odds of just shy of 16 to 1, $16. $10 bet nets you almost $160. So I think that's where my money's going to be this weekend. Guys, thoughts on that?
Please gamble responsibly.
Gamble responsibly. Dad's on mute,
and
but I'm sure he's saying
unmute your microphone,
gamble responsibly.
and he's saying gamble responsibly.
Still on mute, Dad.
He's also saying please gamble responsibly. We do not.
No,
you don't
I actually
gambling.
said, "What's gambling really costing you?"
About $10 if I put a $10 bet on.
Hey, please gamble.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I think we'll get. I think we'll get a lot of excitement out of Traore. I've got no doubt about it. People were making comments watching him live in both Portugal and Hoffenheim, saying how blisteringly quick he was. And
he just looks a different beast this season for us. He looks like that sort of that Traore that everyone was always talking about over the last 5 years. The reason he went to Barcelona, because he's such an exciting player when he's on his day. He's running at full tilt. His crossing still not quite there, but the fact that he's got a bit of finishing coming on a bit and starting to put the ball in the back of the net with a bit of confidence, I really like that. Sammy?
Do you know what I find really interesting about Traore? And I don't think it's a word that you would typically use to describe him, but he kind of comes off a little bit shy. I know you wouldn't necessarily think that by looking at the guy because he looks like a Hulk. But in every kind of thing I've ever seen him in a behind the scenes, he seems very, very timid and very to himself. And I wasn't sure if that was just him being a bit of a dick and just kind of just being above everything. But he seems to have actually integrated into the camp a lot more, particularly in this preseason. He seems to be smiling, which is something I don't necessarily see him do. So I really hope that he's actually at least warmed to it, because it's always going to be difficult when you go to a new club and people are boisterous and people he's basically gone to a new school and he's had to kind of figure out who his friends are. And I feel like he's actually kind of found his place in the squad. He's settled in now. And now it's just up to him to actually enjoy his football and really get settled in. And he has the confidence of everyone around him just being like, you're Traore, you're bigger than everyone by about 30 kilos, you're massive, and just boot the goals because you can do it and you're faster than everyone.
I'm going to say that I'm probably more comfortable with his goal threat, as in I think he's quite dangerous if he can get himself into a position from both the left and right. He's got quite a left foot on him as well. And I actually rate his shot on goal as higher quality than his passing. I'm going to say.
Definitely.
So that's probably not a bad shout, Jack. Assuming he can get himself into a position, he may well score. And Fulham win or draw.
Yeah, well, I'm tempted to palm off the top tip to you for next week, because I think you've won quite a few tips last season. So I wouldn't mind passing it around the circle a little bit. Maybe we keep a bit of a book in the background, a dodgy book of tips as we go through the year and see who comes out on top. Guys, one final thing I want to cover is obviously we've been linked with Diego Carlos. I think we spoke about that in the last podcast, but a new link that's popped up for Joachim Andersen, who obviously played for Fulham a couple of years ago in that horrible Scott Parker period that we've all put out of our minds. But he was one of the shining lights, let's be perfectly honest. And Fulham have come back in with a bid. It's a big bid, about 30 million, I believe we bid to bring Andersen. It was 20
and
was
then
projected,
refreshed.
but we've
to
gone
25,
back
I think.
25 plus 5 from what I saw.
Okay.
Firstly, Sammy, how would you feel about signing Andersen? He had a really good season at Palace last year. I believe he captained them a few times, and he seems like someone who'd be a great captain for Fulham as well, having known the club and would know a handful of the players around still too. How do we feel about that being our main centre-back we go for?
I mean, for me, and we were speaking about it last pod with Dave. This has kind of become the one that I would actually be the most excited about, because Kearney's not going to be a regular starter. In the absence of Tim Ream, even last season, Tim wasn't really there enough to really solidify himself as club captain. Leno's been filling in as captain, and I'm okay with that. But I mean, he left Fulham a good player, and then I think Palace made him an even better player. Like he came, that was because he came from Lyon, I believe, or one of those teams. When he came to us, and he was just breaking into the Premier League and the Danish national squad. Whereas, like, now he's an out-and-out Premier League player. He's an out-and-out Premier League guy. I would love him to come back and literally reclaim the armband, because I think it would just make so much sense. He would fit perfectly on the right. He would just establish himself so easily, and it would just be so familiar. It wouldn't be clunky at all. And for him to come back and actually play under Silva as opposed to bullshit Scott Parker, that's got to be tempting for him. I don't know what the situation is with Crystal Palace. They're in a bit of a weird spot right now in terms of like the way in which they're leveling up. So I hope we give him an offer that's tasty enough for him to actually come back. He would be buttery. He would be buttery tasty with Bassi. I will just lean fully into hope, because I just want to see that. And that could be years and years of joy for me. So I want it to happen. I really want it to happen. And yeah, I mean, if he comes back, that's an immediate slap the armband on him for me.
Dad, thoughts on Andersen?
Oh yeah, I measure my interest by how much I hate playing against him.
Yeah, I hate playing against him
because
he's really handsome.
He's
proper dick in a good way.
He's the shithousery that you do want.
Yeah, the Stefan Johansson style shithousery.
He's classier than that, but he's a sort of dick who never ever gets pulled up by refs because he's just a pretty looking guy, and
he's Jamie Lannister. You won't get that, Dad, but that's an excellent comparison.
You know, he just has a way of appearing to be playing above board, but he's just a water polo player below the surface, and he's just exactly what you want at fullback, not fullback, but at centre back. Sorry, you know, I would love that, as Sam said, that would be a dream team for us in defence.
Yeah, I agree. I think that'd be a great signing. He's a classy player. He's very progressive with the ball. His long passing is superb. I just think about someone like Anthony Robinson making big runs down the left, Iwobi drifts inside, opens up that space. Robinson makes a run down the line. Adama on the other side making runs down the line. It's exciting looking at a player like that who we know can move the ball forward. And then if you put someone like an Andre in there with him, and there's some real excitement building as we get closer to the end of the window. Obviously, it gets a little bit squeaky bum time, but I think the moves we're making in the market this summer are exciting, and they're really good moves. And it's good to see. I know we whinge about it quite a lot, that the way we do business is frustrating sometimes, but the outcomes, if we pull off Anderson, maybe Andre and McTominay from here, it's an amazing window. And there's a lot of work to be done still, but we're looking in a really good place at the moment. I don't know why you're smoking there, Dad.
I'm not being funny though. Like,
Just
Anderson for me is officially top priority over Andre, because I mean, can you just think about it for a second? Leno, Robinson, Bassi, Anderson, Tete or Castagna. That is a filthy, sexy backline, and I want it. I want it so badly, and that would just fill me with confidence all season. I'd completely chill on that and just be super stoked.
Yeah, guys. Final thing we need to do is actually predict the game. Sammy, scoreline prediction.
I hate that I am gonna do it, but my brain says 1-1. It will be a 1-1 on it, like, and it'll be really shitty as well, because it'll be 1-1 in like the 87th minute or something like that, and it'll just break all our hearts. But I think 1-1.
I like how you're getting shitty at a 1-1 draw against Man United at Old Trafford. That's a great.
I've been spoiled. I've been spoiled, and I want the best. I want these guys to go all the way.
Dad, your prediction?
So this is where all that hard work and fitness that Mooney's has invested in over summer comes to fruition, and he actually gets a brace together with a Traore goal, but Man U do actually get 2, so we win 3-2.
I like it.
Okay.
In preparing the slides for today, I decided I'd just go ahead and prepare the slide for the result as well. I've got a 2-1 win with goals from Adama, Smith Rowe, and then a goal from Garnacho for Man United. I think 2-0 at half time for Fulham. I'm. What's it called?
Put money on it.
Put it into the universe and see if it happens.
Please gamble responsibly. Responsibly.
Yeah, I'm feeling 2-0 at half time, 2-1 final score. Maybe I must have to put money on that, because I've seen it. I've had a vision. But look, I think either way, it's going to be a really exciting start to the season. There's a lot of changes if you look at the team compared to last year, but it's exciting times being a Fulham fan at the moment. I'm looking forward to the season kicking off, because it feels like a very long off season so far. It'll be really good to get back into football. It's a shame it's a 3 a.m. kickoff for us here in Australia, but it'll be worth it to wake up that early for the game. Guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there. Sammy, thank you for joining tonight.
Thank you very much for having me. I hope next time we speak, Anderson's on the books and I've got a smile on my face. And if that doesn't happen, it's going to make for good content, because I'm going to be whingy. And I look forward to getting back. I can't believe this is the 3rd season that we've done this, by the way. Like, this is impressive. We're still doing this now. Like, I feel very warm and poignant, and I cannot believe that I am vaguely taken seriously as a football journalist. And I look forward to continue doing that with you both.
Journalist is a very strong term for what you say.
Don't worry, Sam. No one does.
A respected journalist in my field.
Someone who talks about Fulham very occasionally. Dad, thanks for joining tonight.
It's a pleasure. Enjoyed it. And as I said, looking forward to it. I'm keen to start talking about results and reviewing an actual game rather than just musing on stuff for 2 months.
Yeah, fair call. A big thank you to everyone who continues to follow the podcast, continues to follow us on the Discord, on our website, cravenpod.com. Sam, that's a very millennial love heart there you're going with.
Actually,
Gareth Bale wouldn't be very happy with that.
That's
the love
millennial.
heart we're looking for. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate all the support. Looking forward to getting back into very regular podding as well. We've obviously taken a bit of time off over summer, but now that we're back into the swing of things in the season, expect to hear us a couple of times a week as we get back into it. But yeah, mainly really appreciate everyone continuing to follow us and support us. And as always, come on, you Whites.